Our speaker this evening, Michael Eisner, has been a leader in the American entertainment industry for 4 decades. He began his career at ABC, where he helped take the network to #1 in primetime, daytime, and children's television. In 1976, he became president of Paramount Pictures, turning out a string of critically acclaimed and blockbuster films that positioned the studio as the most profitable in both theatrical movies and network television productions. Mr. Eisner assumed the position of chairman and CEO, and this is what you all know him for, of the Walt Disney Corporation Company in 1984. And in the ensuing 21 years, he led its transformation from a film and theme park with an enterprise value of about $1.8 billion into a global media empire valued at over $100 billion. In 2005, Michael began the next act of his career by founding the Throwback Company, a privately held company that makes investments in and incubates companies and opportunities in the media and entertainment space. And this kind of matches what we do here. We, especially through the College of Fine Arts, percolate up incredible talent and create opportunities in the entertainment space, especially in the entertainment and technology space, which is something that Michael Eisner is critically good at. The Toronto portfolio includes VooGuru, and I probably said that wrong, but you know, Guru sounds good, an independent studio providing story-driven content for digital platforms, and the Topps Company, which is familiar to those of you who collect sports cards or remember the Bazooka candy brand. I don't know, how many of you collected Topps cards when you were kids? Wow, a lot of hands just went up, as did I and as did our son. Under Michael's vision, the iconic Top brand is being transformed into a full-fledged sports media brand, while the Bazooka brand is being retooled to become the world's most innovative kids confection company. A fervent believer in teamwork, Mr. Eisner's passion and understanding of strong partnerships inspired his best-selling book, Working Together, Why Great Partnerships Succeed, which he co-authored with Aaron Cohen. The book offers readers an intimate and deeply personal look at some of the most rewarding business partnerships, his personal challenges, and uncovering what makes those partnerships tick, while weaving a much larger story about the true nature of achievement in life and business. And you know, there's a quote that Michael came out with, and I'm not sure he remembers, but I read it, and it was pretty impressive. He said, "Yeah, I love biographies. I love the biographies of famous people, but I mostly love the first 2 chapters because that's where they're struggling, and that's where they go to make it. And after that, it's not so interesting anymore." So, in order, thank you for the single, perhaps ironical applause. For this opportunity tonight, we're going to hear a person with determination, with vision, and with passion. And I think that those are elements that really make UNLV proud. We think of ourselves as the university that lies at the direct intersection of creativity and technology. And I suspect that we're going to get a whole lot of that tonight. So I can't think of anyone better to introduce this evening than Michael Eisner. Please join me in welcoming him now.
Thank you, Neil. That was incredibly generous. I do remember that quote, and I do believe it. You know, the first chapter of Famous People is like everybody else, and then the rest of it is, well, you read about it in the newspaper. So it's those first 2 chapters that are interesting. Anyway, I really do appreciate that introduction, and I just want to say you make it sound like my career has been, you know, nothing but unending success with no bumps along the way. But of course, that's not how things go in business or in life. I'm reminded of the year the Orlando Magic hit one of those rough patches, losing 7 out of the first 27 games. And this prompted the team's general manager, Pat Williams, to say, we can't win at home. We can't win on the road. As a general manager, I just can't figure out where else to play. While there's no way to avoid the occasional losing streak in our lives, I found that there is a way to make them less frequent and more tolerable when that does happen. And that is by having a partner. In fact, I believe so strongly in the power of partnerships that I wrote a book, as was just discussed, called Working Together. I speak from experience. I benefited from 3 major partnerships in my life. My wife, Jane, my wife of 46 years, with Barry Diller at ABC and then again at Paramount, and with Frank Wells at Disney. As important as these partnerships have been for me, I'm afraid that they didn't guarantee nothing but endless triumphs and eternal bliss, except of course with my wife. For example, at Disney back in 1989, my partner Frank Wells and I appeared on the steps of the Paris Bourse to announce Euro Disney's listing on the French Stock Exchange. We expected to be cheered for bringing this tremendous investment to France. Instead, this is what greeted us. So, even in this instance, there was an advantage in having a partner. It gave the protesters someone else to throw eggs at. Frank and I got our suits cleaned and got back to work. Euro Disney went on to become a spectacular resort that is now the most visited tourist destination in all of Europe. For 10 years, Frank and I worked side by side. By any number of objective measures, Disney achieved tremendous growth during this period. But none of these yardsticks can gauge the sheer enjoyment I experienced every day getting to work with Frank Wells. I admired his foresight, daring, fearlessness, and sheer love of life. But tragically, some of these traits led to the sudden end of our partnership when he died in a helicopter crash while skiing in these Nevada mountains. One of the partnerships the book examines is that of Frank and me. Also of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, Bill and Melinda Gates, producer Brian Grazer and director Ron Howard, designer Valentino and Giancarlo Giametti, entrepreneurs Steve Rubel and Ian Schrager, investor John Angelo and Michael Gordon, restaurateurs Susan Feniger and Mary Sue Milligan. Also Home Depot founders Arthur Blank and Bernie Marcus, and baseball manager Joe Torre and Don Zimmer. The pursuit and personas of these 20 individuals couldn't be more diverse. Nevertheless, I discovered there was a consistent theme that was evidence in these partnerships. First of all, there's what I call partnership math. 1 + 1 = 3 or 30 or even 300. Each of the individuals I interviewed is terrifically talented, but they all recently admitted that they wouldn't have achieved the full extent of their success acting on their own. 2 minds are better than 1, and 2 minds that are supportive and challenging each other can make a big difference. That ideas grow and they become a phenomenon. Another trait that all of these partnerships shared was extreme compatibility, even though in many instances the personalities involved strikingly different kinds of people. Undoubtedly, the most unique example of this partnership compatibility is of Susan Feniger and Mary Sue Milligan. You see, Milligan and Feniger were married to the same man. Of course, not at the same time, sequentially, but they were married to the same man, which is not a condition of all partnerships. Anyway, much of my success in partnerships with Barry Diller, and I was not married to him or Frank Wells, we developed a kind of refined methodology that has underpinned most of my accomplishments in business. This methodology involves something very simple, the box. It really works like this. Early in the process of developing a new undertaking, you determine how much you want to spend on it. This is your financial box. Some require a large box, while others do fine with a small one. Then comes the less straightforward part of the process. What goes inside that box? Whatever the project, I maintain that there is one crucial element to attain optimal results: creativity. For obvious reasons, creativity is closely associated with the entertainment industry, but it is essential for any endeavor. But creativity alone is not the answer. It needs to have a symbiotic relationship with strong fiscal discipline. This relationship is what I call creativity in a box. Interestingly, I found variations of this methodology being implemented by a number of the partners I talked to. Producer Brian Glazer of Imagine Entertainment serves as a creative partner while also establishing a box for each film for director Ron Howard that Ron Howard will create. Films like A Beautiful Mind or Apollo 13 are now in theaters. Rush. Designer Valentino is useless when it comes to finance, so his partner, Giancarlo Giametti, sets parameters with which Valentino's genius can flower. Similarly, Ian Schrager played many roles, including the financial role, while his partner Steve Rubell reinvented New York nightlife by establishing the extraordinarily successful nightclub Studio 54. Sadly, they both ended up going to prison when too much success led them to losing this discipline. Their financial box morphed into a car trunk stuffed with millions of dollars in cash, as their moral compass got somehow momentarily trampled. Despite the Rubell-Schrager catastrophe, the rest of my analysis of partnerships revealed creativity in a box does provide a formula for consistently achieving success. And to produce optimal results, this strategy needs to be coupled with something else. And it may surprise you when you hear that I'm talking about micromanagement. Now, I realize that conventional thinking has come to depict micromanagement as something of a pejorative. Nothing could be further from the truth. Micromanagement is really just shorthand for saying that managers should be very involved in every level of operations and should assume a high degree of responsibility for everything within their oversight. Disney's founder, Walt, was a great micromanager all the time, whether he was coming up with a gag for a cartoon or picking up trash on the streets of Disneyland. Nothing was too small for his attention. Walt understood that micromanagement is just really leading by example, being willing to get into the weeds, and if necessary, pulling out some of them with your own hands. To give you an idea of how creativity in box process comes together, I'd like to tell you about a film I'm sure you're all familiar with, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Raiders of the Lost Ark. Of course, it's now a classic, but we didn't know that when Barry and I greenlit it at Paramount, which is a term for saying yes. Believe it or not, every other studio had passed on the project because the idea of a globe-trotting archaeologist sounded like it would result in the most expensive film in history. But Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, who over the years have comprised other remarkably successful ventures, if intermittent, they have been successful together over and over again. But for us, they were going to deliver a picture that needed a surprisingly modest financial budget, or I couldn't get it approved. So we set a budget that was really tight, and Stephen and George kept their end of the bargain. For example, you probably all remember the big sword bullwhip fight in Egypt that ends with this memorable moment. Look at this. Okay, so this is how that really came about. On the day of the shooting that scene, Harrison Ford had, how do I put this gently, digestive problems. Really big time digestive problems, which was delaying productions. I mean, he kept running to the hotel and back. You get the point. He was supposed to do one more elaborate fight scene with a guy with a big sword, but he was feeling horrible, and he just said he had to go back to his room. This would have required another day of shooting, adding significant costs to the production. So it was decided to just have Harrison shoot the bad guy so everybody could go home and the movie could stay on budget. Not only did we save money on the scene, but it turned out better than if Steven, with our encouragement, hadn't micromanaged the project and instead had simply spent the extra money to shoot it as it was originally conceived. As you can see, creativity can actually flourish within sensible financial limitations. And the opposite can certainly be the case. Any number of mega-budgeted films have been mega-budgeted flops because they attempted to substitute greater capital expenditure for creativity. This rarely works. One such example I can think of was the film Raise the Titanic. Not the Titanic, Raise the Titanic. After the producer's experience, this producer, Lou Grade, concluded it would have been cheaper to lower the Atlantic. At Paramount, Barry Diller and I pursued this creativity in a box strategy by keeping movie budgets under $10 million, which was well below the industry average at the time. At Disney, Frank and I continue this practice of keeping budgets well below the norm, often by starring films with actors whose careers had experienced a slight dip, but were brilliant. This prompted Robin Williams to joke that we cast our movies by hanging out at the back door of the Betty Ford Treatment Center. Which wasn't true, by the way. Although Down and Out in Beverly Hills had Bette Midler, Robin Williams, and Nick Nolte, all graduates. Well, anyway. No, I don't think Bette was a graduate. Is the press here? Please forget what I just said. Anyway, our decision-making at Paramount and then at Disney illustrated another common trait of many successful partnerships. One of the two individuals nearly always assumes the senior role. I mean, that's natural. In my partnership with Barry Diller, it was Barry who was the first among equals. At Disney, I had the ultimate responsibility. I found this phenomenon was often repeated in the partnerships I observed. In all of these relationships, there was a senior partner. A prime example of this is Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. Over the 46 years they have delivered to their investors compounded annual growth of more than 20%. But they have been partners. Throughout this partnership, Warren has been the one in the spotlight, the one playing the ukulele, arguably the most famous businessman in America, and maybe the most famous in the world. Yet he will tell anyone that Berkshire Hathaway wouldn't be the company it is today without Charlie. Together, they have built Berkshire Hathaway into a trusted brand within the investment community and elsewhere. As you can see, partnership building and brand building do go together. There are many ways to measure the strength of a brand, but Berkshire Hathaway may be the most unique. You see, Buffett and Munger have chosen never to split their company stock. As a result, it's trading at about $175,000 a share. With a price tag like that, it doesn't really draw customers. So you can see how strong their brand must be. At Disney, we split our stock many times since the Disney brand was quite different from Berkshire Hathaway. In fact, many of our shareholders were children who were given a single share of stock when they were born or given 10 shares at a birthday or something like that. This demonstrated the deep appeal of the Disney brand, but I doubt this would have happened very often if each share cost $175,000. In 1996, when we acquired Capital Cities ABC, we added a second major brand to our company, ESPN. The value of the Disney and ESPN brands is enormous. One stands for family, the other stands for sports. Last year, an analysis done by many security firms concluded that Disney's ownership of ESPN is worth at least $32 billion, which is nearly 40% of the total value of Disney. You might say that ESPN has become the protector of the little mouse. I find brand building to be like a pointillist painting. You're probably all familiar with Georges Seurat's Sunday Afternoon on the island of La Grande Jatte, which is one of the finest examples of pointillism. From a distance, it is an amazingly vivid picture of people enjoying a day at the park. But as we step closer, we see that the intensity of the picture is due to the fact that it is made up of thousands of individual dots of color. Then if you go really closer and closer to the canvas, you notice remarkable quality about those dots. Okay, the dots aren't really, well, maybe they are, shaped like Mickey Mouse. But they are instructive of how we approach managing our brands. Every toy, every Disney TV show, every theme park attraction, every Disney on Ice performance, every hotel room, every topiary, every Disney movie, online community, every Disney Broadway show is another dot in the painting of a brand. Each dot is important, but no single dot captures the whole essence. We found that if you take it one dot at a time, paying close attention to the quality of every detail, yes, we're talking about micromanagement here, then you will create something of incredible value. Seurat took 2 years to create his masterpiece. Similarly, it takes decades to create a meaningful brand. Whether the brand is called Disney or it's called anything Joe's Hardware, anything where you're building quality. To give you an illustration of just how important it is to mind the details, I'd like to show you a clip I'm almost certain you've seen, but you've never seen it in this way. It needs no real introduction.
From the day we arrive on the planet and blinking step into the sun, es gibt mehr zu sehen, als man je sehen kann, mehr zu tun, so viel mehr zu verstehen. Poi un raggio di sole ti abbraccia, i tuoi occhi si tingono di blu. E o sol a girar sobre o azul deste céu nos mantém nesse rio a fluir. Desde
Thank you. As you can see, we had to find singers, and those are different singers in every language, who have precisely the right vocal quality to serve the dramatic needs of this film. Thanks in part to this micromanagement and the understanding that the international marketplace is getting smaller and more important all the time, The Lion King grossed almost $500 million overseas, a full $125 million more than it did in the United States. And this is one of the ways you mine your dots and build your brand. This is certainly what Bernie Marcus and Arthur Blank did in building the Home Depot brand. These two individuals also provided a vivid demonstration of the yin-yang aspect of so many partnerships, where each partner brings a different and a complementary strength to the relationship. Bernie was the salesman and visionary, but also a disciplined executive. Arthur was the numbers guy, but also creative and a leader. Together, they created an entire category of retail, the home improvement store, and established Home Depot as a trusted brand. The yin-yang quality of partnerships promotes balanced approach to problem solving, but it is something else as well. It often fosters creative tension, with each partner prodding the other to get out of their comfort zone and attempt new ways to do their job. Let me give you a particularly dramatic example. After a career as an outstanding baseball player, Joe Torre went on to be a pretty mediocre manager with a record of more losses than wins. Then, in 1996, he was hired by the notorious George Steinbrenner to manage the Yankees. In this job, Joe would have no margin for error. So he took on a partner, Don Zimmer, whom he hired as the team's bench coach. Whereas Joe was a by-the-book manager, Don believed in going more with one's gut. In their first season with the Yankees, the team won the pennant for the first time in 15 years. Then came Game 5 of the World Series, which was tied 2 games each. 2 outs in the 9th inning. The Yanks were ahead 1-0, but the Braves were at bat, and the tying run was on third base. Here's what happened.
Strike one. Broken bat, foul ball, strike two. The 0-2. Bologna stays alive. 0-2. Do it again. Bologna battling. Runners at the corners, 2 out. Still an 0-2 count on Bologna. What an at bat. From Wetland. Into right field. O'Neill is there. Ball game. Yankees win 1-0 as Wetland saves it for Andy Pettitte.
So baseball doesn't get much better than that. Neither do partnerships. You see, that spectacular catch was made by Paul O'Neill. Before the game, Torre had actually pulled O'Neill from the lineup because he had an injured left hamstring. After hearing about this O'Neill decision, Zimmer took Torre aside and said he thought it was a mistake. Zimmer felt that O'Neill had played his heart out all season, had helped inspire the team, and deserved to play. Joe reversed his decision, put O'Neill in the game, and the rest is history. But what if Zimmer had been wrong? This is another great thing about partnerships. Of course, there will be mistakes. But in every partnership I observed, there was an unqualified support, even when it turned out the other guy made the wrong decision. For example, Charlie Munger opposed Warren Buffett's decision to invest in U.S. Air. The deal quickly went south. But there were no I told you so. Instead, according to Warren, Charlie worked harder on that deal than any other. But the most remarkable instance of partner loyalty has to involve Steve Rubel and Ian Schrager. When they were charged with tax evasion, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy for unreported income from Club 54, Schrager was offered a deal to testify against Rubel because the authorities wanted to nail him since he was the front guy, a theatrical guy, and possibly not the most attractive guy. Schrager refused to do it and instead went with his partner to serve identical sentences in prison together. There, they shared the same cell, realized their errors, and emerged to achieve new and more rock-solid and more honest, I might add, success by inventing the boutique chic hotel. Their partnership also illustrates something that is absolutely essential for success, and that is failure. Yes, to be successful, you need to fail. I surely hope your failures will not be like Schrager's or Rubel's, moral failures that land you in prison, but fail you must. As Tom Watson, the founder of IBM, once said, the way to accelerate your success is to double your failure rate. With this in mind, I have always tried to make everyone aware that failure is not a corporate death sentence. Making the same mistake twice is, of course, seriously frowned upon, but an intelligent stumble is nothing to be ashamed of. To punish failure is yet another way to encourage mediocrity, because mediocrity is what fearful people will always settle for. In thinking about coping with the possibility of failure, you might again ponder the pointillist painting. One bad dot cannot ruin the painting. You fix it and you move on. However, if you people are afraid to take risks with bright and bold colors, then the entire work will be very dull and very bland. And a fascinating phenomenon occurs with failure. This is fascinating. In many ways, failure, a failing company, is easier to manage than a succeeding company. When a company is failing, there are just a few really interesting advantages. Like, people don't ask for unrealistic raises, not in a failing company. Nobody complains about being understaffed. Everybody understands the value of frugality. People seem happy to work together in a failing company. Ridiculous executive perks disappear. People are thrilled to have a job in a failing company. Cross-departmental synergies, people working together, quite easy to implement. Everybody is like on board. Union negotiations become reasonable and resolutions happen quickly. People actually smile often in a failing company. Resumes do go out daily in a failing company, but few people get hired away. Here's the contrast. Here's what happens if you're successful, especially really successful. Everybody is unhappy. Everybody is jealous, and everybody thinks the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. Everything is more expensive. Everybody complains. People expect excessive raises. Everyone's a vice president, at least, just everybody. Intra-company jealousy grows at companies as the silos in companies expand, making synergy completely impossible. People put out tremendous energy into taking credit. Employees leverage the company's success as their own success. Union negotiations become, rightly, much more difficult and take much longer to complete. Resumes go out daily in the company, just like they did in the failing company, but this time many employees do leave. Eventually, all of this success and all the arrogance that is created by the success usually leads to failure, and the cycle begins again, often with, of course, new management. That's kind of the circle of corporate life. Of course, some successful companies are able, and these are the cool companies to watch, to remain successful. But in order to achieve this, a successful company has to keep reinventing itself, and it must understand the challenges of managing in success and understand how people react in success. Managing in failure is a walk in the park. Managing success is running through a jungle. To give you a non-Disney example of what I'm talking about, look at Apple. When Steve Jobs returned to the company as CEO in 1997, my son Eric suggested I buy Apple stock, which was then trading at like $4 a share. Eric reasoned, correctly so, that the company couldn't drop much further, and that over time, Jobs, who he thought was pretty cool, could perhaps double Apple's value. As always, I listened to my son and his thorough advice and ignored it. Needless to say, Eric was right, although the stock did not double, rather it went up by 10,000%. Steve Jobs dramatically demonstrated how to manage in failure and then how to manage the success by continually reinventing the company and its product line. This is why joining a failing company is not always a bad idea. This is what I did at ABC, struggling third among three, then again at Paramount, and once more at Disney, which was dead last at the box office when we got there. Of course, I didn't realize at the time that was pursuing a strategy for me for joining a company that was failing. If I could have, I would have joined a company that was successful, and if I could have, I would have. But apparently, there wasn't anybody that wanted me. So, in hindsight, there are some of these benefits that you see if you happen to end up joining a failing company that you can turn it around. By the way, in a failing company, if you join it, you cannot fall off the floor. It's been my motto for my whole career. Join a company where you can't fall off the floor. You are given time to succeed, something you really don't get that often. You can blame previous management for all your problems, something I did try not to do. You can take credit for anything good that happens. Again, something I try not to do most of the time. You can make necessary overhead cuts without too much difficulty. Just make sure not to unnecessarily cut, because you can never cut your way to success, of course. You can hire a lot of smart people for not that much money and much smarter than you, and they will make you look really good. And everybody works hard, everything is upside, and of course you get more credit than you deserve as the company improves. So at Disney, once we started consistently experiencing that curse of success, we actually tried to counteract the curse of success by encouraging humility of failure through something called The Gong Show, which was based on a 70s TV program, which I'm sure nobody in here even heard of. But during The Gong Show, we would sit around a table and toss out ideas for movies and TV shows. Outrageous ideas were completely acceptable. I mean, the crazier they were, the more love you got. After a while, everybody would lose their inhibitions and would really get into it. Of course, most of the ideas were awful, including mine, and would deservedly get gonged. And when a gong went off, you shut your mouth. The idea was over. It was almost like we were in our own reality show kind of thing. After a few hours of this, and I do mean hours, we would do it for like 7 hours at a time, some really creative concepts would emerge. The Gong Show worked because it was almost a badge of honor to get gonged. It was okay to fail. And from this sensibility sprang a lot of our success. The Little Mermaid is just one example of something that came out of one of those gong shows. Tolerance for failure, was important at the so-called old media companies like Paramount and Disney, and it is vital to the new world of the internet. The internet is changing everything, and look what it's done to the entertainment industry. When I worked at Disney, if you wanted to watch something on a screen at home, you had a total of 3 choices, and that was only if you lived in a place that got all 3 networks. Today, the choices are virtually infinite, offering cinematic opuses such as this clip. Now, I didn't just show you that for the cheap laugh that thank you we got. It's actually a free laugh, since it was on YouTube. I believe this video also provides a succinct, if slimy, metaphor for what it takes to succeed in consumer-oriented businesses. And as I see it, too many businesses are like that guy holding the computer screen in front of the frog. They're trying to fool the consumer into jumping at something that has no real value. But consumers aren't dumb, and they don't like being tricked. Like the frog, they pretty quickly figure out what's authentic and what isn't, and painful consequences for any company that tries to deceive them. But back to the internet, which is about much more than angry amphibians. As I said, it is changing everything from my world of entertainment to every possible industry to institutes of higher learning like UNLV. And it's become a part of our lives with such amazing speed. As this chart shows, it took 70 years for half the United States to get a telephone. It took about 40 years for half the country to get a VCR. It took 20 years for half the country to get a computer. But it only took 10 years for half the country to get internet. As a result, consumption habits are changing rapidly. And people don't just like the internet, they love it. And consider this chart. Ad Age magazine conducted a survey asking people about what things they'd be willing to give up if they had to make a choice. Almost half of them said they would give up their cable TV, about a third would be willing to give up their mobile phones, but only 6% would give up the internet. More people were willing to give up food. So I guess you could say that people literally, I don't know if I can say this, hunger for what is offered on the web. Since leaving Disney, I have been determined to feed that appetite with great programming. Right after stepping out of the door of the Walt Disney Company, I started one of my own called Tornante, which is Italian for hairpin turn. At Tornante, we have launched a studio for new media platforms called Vugaru. It has released several, 20 or 30 successful internet series. We conceived, shot, and distributed these series in a fraction of the time and even a smaller fraction of the cost of producing entertainment for traditional television. In other words, they required a very small financial box, but with almost no limits on the creativity we could put into it. One of our latest entries is called The Booth at the End, which is designed for all the different screens consumers use today digitally. It can be viewed on mobile devices with 2-minute episodes, online with 10-minute episodes, or on television with half-hour episodes. As you can see, the booth was created with a very flexible financial box. Here's a look.
I heard you can do things.
I give people the opportunity to do things.
But you can make things happen, like magic.
Is there something you need?
I want to be prettier.
What we do is we make an agreement.
What do I have to do?
I offer you a task. You do the task. You get what you want.
Tasks.
So if I do this thing, my son will live.
Do you make all the people that come to you harm someone?
How can I know you're not the devil?
I was wondering what happens if I don't do this thing you asked me to do.
I'm not gonna rob a bank.
Look, I want you to stop her from wanting what she wants.
That's not the offer.
No, hear me out.
I can't.
I already killed the guy for you. You want more?
What one begins, one must finish.
We'll make it stop.
I can't.
Give me something. A token. A proof or something.
Start. See what happens.
So at Tornante, thank you, we're applying all the business principles I've learned over the years. Partnerships, micromanagement, brand building, tolerance of failure. Of course, at Tornante, I no longer get to work with Frank Wells or directly with Barry Diller, although I'm on his board at the company IAC. but I'm still closely involved with my third partner, Jane. Jane is a constant sounding board for all my ideas, many of which are horrible, in which case she politely says, that's a horrible idea. Usually, I must recognize her wisdom and move on to the next idea, hopefully less horrible. Then again, some of the horrible ideas keep hanging around after getting looked at from all angles. Sometimes they actually do work. With Jane's support and encouragement, I've been exploring all the intriguing new opportunities that we find at Tornante. And this brings me to my ultimate point about partners. They make everything more fun. We are Homo sapiens and are very social animals. We enjoy engaging with others, whether taking a vacation, watching a movie, going on Facebook, or playing a round of golf. I just wish golf didn't take so long, but that's another story. There was a landmark Harvard study that began in the 1940s, coincidentally beginning with the class of John Kennedy. 250 men were interviewed every 5 years in an effort to determine what really made a person happy. This study continues to this day, though only half that class is still alive. The study concluded that there was just one overriding cause of happiness: sustained relationships over a long period of time. Wealth and social class didn't mean anything, and even exercise only helped so much. What mattered was having valued, long-term interaction with a fellow human being. In other words, in addition to making you more productive, more trusting, more inventive, more daring, and more successful, partnerships also make you just plain happier. And this is true in the work, or this is true in your universities, and it is also true in your personal life. At the top of an organization, partnerships. The bottom or anywhere in the organization and in between, partnerships. The people I interviewed for my book are all leaders in their fields, but the lessons they teach apply to everyone at every level. If you can pair up with a compatible partner, you will find that things just tend to work out better, and best of all, you will find that you are enjoying the journey that much more. I know all this has certainly been true for me. Thanks to my 3 partnerships, I've been able to develop and refine the career tools I've been advocating today. These tools are extremely versatile. In my career, I've used them all. I've used everything, from a gunshot to a Lion King to a booth to all the stuff we've talked about, which is why my message to you is simply this: think inside the box. First, make sure the box is the right size, then micromanagement it wisely, mind the pointless details, be willing to dance with failure, and stuff that box with all the creativity you can muster. Plus, if you can, find a partner to do it with. This will make you successful and more likely. Plus, a partnership will make everything more enjoyable along the way. Indeed, by following these principles, I think you will be surprised by all the success you can achieve once you're all boxed in. Thank you very much.
You don't need to talk with the bottle cap anymore.
That's right.
I go now into the crowd, as you can see, the left.
I'm just going to pretend that was for me. So here's what, once again, one person ironically applauding. Here's what I got from what you said, Michael. Are you ready? Budget in a box, partnerships, failure, creativity, micromanagement, happy. And there's a story about UNLV in there somewhere. But what I want to tell you is, Michael, clearly there's a challenge you're lacking in your life, and that's the challenge of partnering with a university to help us be super creative partners with a limited budget. And so I totally invite you in to UNLV, and if you ever want to take a crack at, being a university president, helping to manage the Board of Regents. Did I say that? I'm sorry. Or really working with us to build something wonderful, spectacular, and great. We would totally welcome you and your ideas. And I thought that was an absolutely stellar talk, and I learned a lot. Thank you so much. Now, Michael says he'll answer some questions. So once again, I'm going to lay out the ground rules. Are you ready? First, please do not give a speech. Ask a question. Secondly, ask one question, not 4 questions. We will have folks on either side of the auditorium who will help, but I invite you now to come down and please regale your questions in front of our wonderful host, or excuse me, our wonderful speaker here, to see if we can mine his wisdom just a bit more. Thank you so much, and Michael, good luck with those questions.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, my name is Ray Garza, and I'm the owner of the U.S. Trademark University. And my question is, do you know where you were at on October 1st, 17 years ago?
What did you say you did? So I'll give you another hint.
Yeah, I'm the owner of the U.S. Trademark University, but my question was, where were you on October 1st, 17 years ago?
I was in Dayton at a meeting. Surprised I know that? No, I have no idea.
You were at Disney World for the 25th anniversary where I met you 17 years ago when I met my wife 17 years ago today. Today's our anniversary. Thank you.
That's why we did it. Yes,
So I'm Carolyn Yuha, the Dean of the School of Nursing and Allied Health Sciences. I loved the Lion King video. And as I was watching it, I was thinking of how it depicts the respect for diversity, which is a big issue here at UNLV. So my question is, can we have a copy of that Lion King version?
No.
Okay.
Because I never really asked Disney if I could show it.
Well, it was
and there is intellectual property, which I really respect.
But I want you to know that it shows the value of respecting, multiple cultures. And so thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, I actually learned, I was at a conference in Colorado, and Yo-Yo Ma was there, and he was talking about the edge effect, which is, I'm in trouble here because there's biologists here, but what I understood the edge effect was that when two geological things come together, like mountain to the ocean, or the desert and the mountain, or the desert and the ocean, in that little space, that diverse space, erupts creativity and new things. And I was so impressed with what Yo-Yo Ma said that I asked him if I could work with somebody and write a book about the edge effect and diversity. Because when I went to Disney, they were like 40,000 cast members. The highest female in the entire corporation was not a president, vice president, director, manager, but a person that handled talent relations at Walt Disney World. There were, I think, in 40-some-odd thousand people, 3 Jewish people, 6 African-American people, and I don't know if 10 Hispanics in the whole corporation. And in the course of the next couple of years, it became a very diverse company, extremely diverse. And out of that diversity, I believe, is what sprung most of our creativity. And that diversity is the American story, it's the immigrant story, it's what everybody asks me around the world. Why is Hollywood, why do we export, the #1 export intellectual product? More than airplanes, more than agricultural, intellectual product is the #1 export of the United States. And I keep trying to figure out an answer. Maybe our democratic system, we We don't care what we insult, whatever politician. But I do believe it is what you were talking about. I do believe it is diversity. We didn't make The Lion King to show diversity, but that clip does do it, I agree. Yes, sir. Over here.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Wheeler, and I do community development for Citibank. So my question is, how do you encourage partners to come together and collaborate when they're reluctant, especially when they're reluctant over sharing resources?
It is the hardest thing in business. The word synergy is almost a pejorative word, a negative word, because people resist it so much. People try to create their own silos. So the way you do it is you order it. And you demand that people do it, and you lead by example. And if it's very much like anything, the fish always smells from the head. So at Disney, if the CEO doesn't lean over to pick up paper, nobody else will. When I went to Disney, it must have been psychological because I never had a bad back before or since. I couldn't move for the first 2 weeks. And I would go down to Disneyland to meet everybody, and I'd see a piece of paper. I'm sure somebody threw it there in front of me to see what I was going to do. And no matter what the pain was, you bend over to pick it up. Leadership is by leadership. And when we would have every Monday, we would have the head of every company that Disney owned at lunch every Monday with no agenda. The big agenda was how do the parks help the movie division? How does the movie division help ABC? How does ABC help ESPN? How does ESPN help Walt Disney World? You know what? You order it, and people that won't do it, you fire. I can't think of any other way to do it. Because people, the natural instinct is to hide everything, to keep it, information they think is power. Having a strong person work for you, they think makes you weak. It's always the opposite. The stronger somebody is that works for you, the better you look. So the question is really a good question, and it is, to me, the most aggravating thing in every company I've been in is I worked at Gulf and Western, this big conglomerate which owned Paramount. I begged them to just put in the paycheck of the 110,000 people the name of the movie that was coming out on Friday. I figured if I had 110,000 people interested in our movie, could not be done. Could not be done. We did Laverne and Shirley. I wanted to start a pizza, because they were in the pizza booth all the time in Laverne and Shirley, for those of you who remember that show. I figured 100 million homes, we're getting 20 million homes a week. I can't remember the name of the pizza place in the show. We should do a pizza place. No interest. So when I got to Disney, I kind of figured, except for the board, I had power. So I asked for it. Over here.
Awesome. I thank you. It's an honor to hear you speak here today. Besides your own books, which I'm going to buy them all tomorrow, what are 2 or 3 books that you think everyone should read that have influenced you most, that you think everyone should read at least once?
Well, I'm a big believer in liberal arts. This may be, for those of you who are majoring in like a very narrow thing, I apologize. But I remember, I'm answering your question in kind of a roundabout way. My son wanted to go to film school. So I figured, you do anything for your children. So I figured, well, the film school that everybody wants to go to is USC. And George Lucas owns USC, right? So I figured, that's who I have to get to. So I staged a whole event at Disneyland at Coke Corner, and I said to my son, who was a junior in high school, be at Coke Corner at 11 o'clock. Oh, Dad, I got it. 11 o'clock, Disneyland, Coke Corner, because I was meeting George there. So talking about movies. So George's there, we're sitting, the 3 of us are sitting, I make my wife go away. And I said, oh, Breck, what do you think about doing? He said, oh, I want to go to, he got the cue, I want to go to film school. I said, oh, George, Breck wants to go to film school. Isn't that interesting? And he said, Breck, don't do it. I'm like, he said, anybody can learn how to point a camera. It's like learning to drive. The key is where to go. And if I had said that to my son, oh my God, You would have thought I was a fool. George Lucas said, don't go to film school, get a liberal arts education. He did it. And then he went to graduate school, film school. So I would say, it's like, a cliche, but to read the great literature. And in American literature, Edith Wharton, Hawthorne, Melville, Ethan Frome, great book. I think certainly if you're in high school, Catcher in the Rye, just to know how horrible prep school is where I went. Over there.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Victoria Pendrick. I'm actually a senior at UNLV, and I did the Disney College program last year. My question to you is, what's the best advice you can give to a graduating senior from university?
Get a job?
How to do that?
Over here. Next over here. That's what else? Move out. Don't move away from your parents. Don't get married? Okay. Don't move in with your boyfriend until you're married. I told that to all 3 of my son's girlfriends. Don't move in with them.
Hi, I'm Grant Anderson, and I'm a freshman in the mechanical engineering program here, in case you couldn't tell by my wardrobe. And I was just wondering, does having a partner when starting a business allow you to do it part-time, or do you still have to jump in both feet and fully commit?
Well, I do a lot of things part-time in a full-time way. So, yes, if you're really committed to something, particularly you're starting a new business, and are you taking somebody else's money?
Yeah, it would most likely be another person providing like the venture capital.
If you're taking somebody else's money, you got to do it full time.
Right.
You can't do it like half-ass. If it's your own money, do what you want.
I listened with great interest to your presentation on the benefit of partnerships and working with others with mutual respect. And I couldn't help think in my mind how that contrasts to the dysfunction we're seeing in Washington. And my question is, can the principles you've been espousing apply there? And if so, how? And if so, will you give this presentation to Congress?
It's interesting. I don't understand. No way I could answer that question. Because I just don't understand any of it. But it's interesting how when you go to Washington, everybody asks you if you're a Democrat or a Republican. It's just like the cab drivers. You're checking in a hotel. Are you a Democrat or a Republican? What other city in the world even asks that? So they're so into the fraternity that they're in that they can't see the sorority house on the other side of the street. I don't get it. I don't get it.
My name is Jackie Honing. I'm a management major in the business school here at UNLV. In your time at Disney, if you could pinpoint one moment as your greatest accomplishment, what would it be and why?
It's hard. I don't know. I could probably point to the failures easier. The successes, they take so long to come. By the time they arrive, you're 2 years ahead in your mind. So you never really have, everything moves so quickly in today's society that you don't have time to appreciate it. So I would say the one thing in my 21 years at Disney and even my 10 years at Paramount and my 10 years at ABC before that is that I actually have a functional family and that my kids are good and my wife and I are still together. So I would say that would be up there.
Hello, Michael. My name is Brent Buffon. I'm a senior here at UNLV and I'm getting my liberal arts degree.
Good.
And thank you. So I have 2 questions and you might think they're both simple. So my first question is, in terms of me, I am an entrepreneur and acquiring partnerships. The question for you is, what do you think is more important, being the good partner or finding the good partner?
Being a good partner by tenfold.
Okay.
Because if you're a good partner, probably your partner will be a good partner back. My view has always been from the time I was at ABC and at Paramount, if you have a partnership, you bend over backwards to agree with your partner and to do what your partner wants. If you start off by thinking, oh, what is best for me, the partnership won't work. So the best partnerships I know, it's like the best marriages actually, are those that defer to their partner. Because then their partner defers to them, which is all you really want anyway. So if you defer to your partner, you get it all back. My father taught me that, he said, my relationship with my mother their relationship was so good, because my mother learned that all she had to do was say yes, and then she'd get her way anyway. All he had to do was hear the word yes, and then he felt good, no matter what happened. So that was a good, devious maybe, but a kind of good instrument to go by.
My second question, sorry.
Oh, no, you were on one question.
It was just if you would sign the book for me.
Yes. Next.
All right, thank you.
Hi.
Which book?
Oh.
All right. Just put it right there and I'll sign it. You're welcome.
My name is Dina Banning. I'm a student here at UNLV. I wanted to ask you, okay, Disney has made such an impact in my life, and I'm sure so many other children. It's taught me so many lessons, and I was curious, while working with Disney, how has Disney impacted your life?
Well, I made some money, so that's good. I got to be a boss, which I liked, because I always worked for other people. And I got to exercise my creativity, which is not easy to do, because usually the creative person is the person they put in the back room. You know, they think creative people are like weird. So to give a creative person the head job is unusual, very rare. And I got to work on something that the headmaster of my high school always talked about was, whatever you do, strive for excellence. And Disney always went the high road. And every time we did everything, we strove for excellence. So you always felt good about yourself, even if it didn't work. So I would say that would be my answer.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking my question. I really like when you said that fear of failure creates mediocrity. Do you have any words of advice or maybe something that you told yourself when you get stuck in that fear of failure, or you can feel it coming about?
You just see it all the time. I think maybe that's part of Washington's problem too. Everybody is afraid of failing, and so they take the cautious, mostly traveled, not less traveled route, and you end up in a compromise. You end up in a committee decision. You end up taking all the edges off all of the corners, and you just end up with okay. And if you talk to somebody who's been to a movie and you say to the person, how was the movie? And they say, okay, that is a disaster for a person that made that movie. Because nobody goes to a movie that somebody says, yeah, it was okay. So everything has to be fantastic. In our society, fantastic works. Okay doesn't work. And you just have to keep reminding yourself of that. You have to keep reminding, and it's not economic. See, the problem is most people think to get excellence is economic. If you go into and here's where I would disagree with Steve Jobs, who in his book talks a lot about painting both sides of the fence. I think that's economically silly. If you go into a Disney ride and you turn around, which you don't do, and you look at the animatronics, you'll see a completely unfinished mannequin. What you have to do is do it excellently, not perfectly, because the aspiration for perfection will break you. You just have to be excellent. You have to fool, in the entertainment business, the audience to think it's fantastic. You don't have to paint the back of the set. So that's, I have no idea what I said.
Hi, I'm Nicole, and I'm a journalism major here at UNLV. How do you know when you found the right partner?
Your parents will tell you.
Mr. Eisner, you discussed 3 partnerships, and you discussed the primary partner in 2 of them, and you left out the primary partner in 1. And I was just curious, not trying to put you on the spot, but in your marriage, you didn't say who was the primary partner.
If my wife were here tonight, she would be. In that she's in Los Angeles, I am. No, the fact of the matter, I'm not sure in a marriage that I would put that in the sentence. I may have to rewrite that. I'm not sure in a marriage if one of the partners pretends they're the dominant partner, it works. So I may have to rewrite that paragraph.
Thank you.
I think that's a good point.
Hi, my name's Crystal Maguerza, and I'm a journalism student here at UNLV. And I wanted to ask you, what is your biggest regret in your career?
Well, I don't have many regrets. I regret I was born in 1942, not 1962. I made some pretty dumb hires. I won't go through that. I made a couple of really bad movies. I don't know. I've been lucky. I've been at the right place at the right time. The girl I was engaged to dumped me. I don't regret it at all. I ended up with my wife. With her, it wouldn't have lasted. So I don't know. No regrets.
Michael, we have time for one more.
Okay.
Mr. Eisner, thank you for your time here this evening. Jim Banks, about 35, 40 years ago on the Today Show, there was a gentleman, I do not remember his name, he was extremely successful. The interviewer made the statement to him, well, you must never make a mistake. His response was, the smartest person in the world is only right 60% of the time. I would like your reaction to his statement.
Well, as I said in my prepared remarks, that you have to encourage failure and you have to be prepared to fail yourself. And I don't know whether the 60% is the figure or not. That's a pretty high figure, frankly. I have made a lot of decisions, a lot of good decisions, and I have made about 4 really, really, really bad decisions. And those are the ones that I remember. So I'm not sure what the percentage is, but you have to make mistakes and you have to admit you made mistakes. And you can't blame, and I will finish with this. When somebody comes to you, if you're a boss, or working your way up, and something is screwed up, and they blame 42 other people, all the boss does is get angrier and angrier. But if somebody comes into you and says, I made a mistake, it is my fault, there is nothing you can say to them. They've admitted their mistake, and they're living with it. And you respect them for that. So I would say you should be prepared to make mistakes, and you should, more than that, you should be prepared to admit that you made the mistakes. Not easy to do. I've not always done that. Anyway, thank you all very much.
I just want to say thank you once again. I do have a book for you to autograph here. For the wit, thought, and real intelligence that you put into this program. Please, can we all once again celebrate and thank Michael Eisner. Yeah, I've never seen a double standing O here. Look around. Thank you. Pretty cool. Thank you all, and the Barrick Lecture Series is over for this evening. Drive home safely, and we'll see you next time.